Hello, Bat here. RPG Day 2018, Day 7. How can a GM make the stakes important? On the surface, this is quite a straightforward question, and therefore could give a simple answer. But as like with a lot of things in role-playing, there's a lot of subtleties that are sort of lurking beneath the surface. So the easy answer would be something personal. What does that actually even mean, though? I mean, what makes something personal? Why do people care? What makes them invested? So I put together a big list of different things that the GM can do to help make things personal for a player. Make it personal to the player characters and also the player. Have many plot threads going at the same time. Show and tell consequences earlier on, particularly laws and economic impacts. If someone violates the law, have them arrested. Have a trial actually occur, maybe the players can help influence this. Maybe economics of supply and demand kick in. If the player characters are helping an area cleanse of monsters, then maybe supplies aren't getting through, maybe magical items become more expensive. Even in simple games, simple economic impacts can make it obvious that there's consequences. Have NPCs that are doubters, and then have them proven wrong. So if an NPC says there isn't an issue, there isn't a dragon in the woods, then have it revealed that they're wrong. It shows a small level consequence on a social level. Have mechanical consequences. You want to be rarely bluffing players in regards to fudging dice. I mean, ideally, you shouldn't need to fudge dice, but as we know, there's always exceptions, so depends on the playing style. Foreshadow outcomes. This doesn't have to be supernatural. This could be a dream sequence, or even an in-character chat. I've run 2 campaigns that stand out in regards to this, one being Legend of Five Rings, and another being Aberrant. And in both games, the players spent a lot of time talking in character about changing how society works in that setting, and they were pretty intense sessions. Discuss beforehand out a character. Doesn't have to include spoilers, and can help player expectations with their plans. Use sort of outer character mechanics like in, say, LARP events for classifications, things like threat level and combat level. Therefore, players that want to go to an event, since the nature of LARP is quite physical, players that aren't up for a combat heavy event don't go to one. It saves them wasting their money and possibly spending a weekend in agony or just sitting on the bench as such. Similarly, you could use board game mechanics like a doomsday clock. It's something I've actually been working on myself with one of the big games for years. Have plots keep building. Have small plots maybe tinker out and actually have a little consequence, but then have bigger plots keep building. Give player character and player interest more game time. If they do start to highlight something, then pay attention to it and actually implement it in the game. What is personal to a player character and also the player will likely change over time, so pay attention to player actions and what they say. Consider that epicness is a matter of perspective. Small-scaled but personal things can still have major stakes. Highlight how the game world is alive. Have several things happening at once. Now there's the cliche of taking a player character's things, attacking their interests, threatening their friends and family, and that does work, but unfortunately being a cliche, it's a bit obvious, and it can be a bit irritating as well. Players might actually expect it and be relieved when you don't do it. Consider the importance of animals. Not everyone responds to their things being taken or the family being threatened. Some people are more animal focused. Take a sort of a hint from the book on screenwriting, Save the Cat, maybe tweak it to Save the Owlbear. Different things happening provide a contrast, and thus can help to emphasise stakes. Having flow between major things and minor things show that there's a difference. Have competing choices. If players don't necessarily know what they want to do, that creates tension, and it can actually develop the party discussing the stakes themselves. Again, this allows the GM to listen to what the players think are the more important aspects, and also note what maybe their secondary and tertiary ideas are. I think the most important point is time pressure. All the above comes down to the issues that, after all, characters are mortal, or at least the players are. Following on from the time pressure point, when I was working at KHC Games, running Play by Mail games for various customers, one of the big issues is there was only a limited amount of things that players could do each turn, but they knew that their opponents, and also allies, were similarly doing things, and this helped to sort of emphasise that every actual action that they did potentially had a lot of stake behind it, but certainly over time the stakes became obvious. The time pressure of which choices to go with. A little quick short story as well, when I was an NPC at Lorien Trust in the Healers Guild running out plots. some of the players got quite surprised because I ran out plots that weren't about them being massacred or being betrayed, but actually small positive things. And some of the players commented they didn't know what to expect in regards to whether an NPC wandering into the guild was actually a threat or not. And then therefore they had to determine what was important because there's so many things happening, they didn't know which way to turn, which meant that they actually gave plot to other players. A common thing at a festival like that I've found is the sort of proactive players tend to end up doing most of the things in regards to the plot. And this can mean that players that aren't maybe as physically able or don't necessarily know as many players in the game yet, don't have those network connections yet, they're not able to get involved in things as much and they become sort of passive standby. Now at a tabletop, this is rarely an issue since the players can be discussing things with the GM directly. Another thing to think about is how computer role-playing games, they are quite different from tabletop, and the nature of those is that time's generally not an issue, that you can put the main plot on sort of indefinite hold whilst you carry out 1,000 side quests, whether it's Baldur's Gate, Planescape Torment, or obviously Fallout being one of the most ridiculous examples, Elder Scrolls as well. The nature of time means that things don't really matter to an extent. So we come back to this strange combination of all things that we've listed off. We're mortal players, we're playing a game, time matters, time is our stake. The fact that we're playing the game itself is actually part of our choice in life. And the actual game itself, you could then argue, is a stake of our life force.